Alright, so hello. My name is Vageto. I'm an undergraduate at RPI, working with the Rensselaer Center for Open Source Software. And I'm excited to be here today. I'm going to be talking about my project, which is called Collective Commons, an open source web platform for digital democracy. So the basic idea here is making a customizable and extensible system for making collective decisions on a regular basis. But before I get into the details of what this project is all about, I just want to do a little bit of introduction. It might sound like I'm not talking about software, but just bear with me. I'll get to the software. So I want to start by talking about decision making in general. So we all have to make decisions all the time, whether it's what to have for breakfast or what career path to take. But individuals are not the only ones who have to make decisions. Anytime you have people working together in a group, the group has to be able to make decisions as a whole. And if you've ever been part of a group that has to make decisions like this, you know that sometimes it gets a little bit tense. And for small groups, a yelling contest is an okay way of making decisions sometimes, but for larger groups, you need a more formal system of making decisions. So on the national level, that system is governments. Government is how, as a country, we make collective decisions. Of course, there's different styles of government that have different pros and cons. Here in America, we're proud of having a democratic government. But if you've been following politics recently, you know that that has some inherent drawbacks, because it naturally leads to political deadlock and indecisiveness. On the other hand, countries like China have a more authoritarian government, and that lets them be much more decisive with their decisions. So part of what I'm trying to do with this project is reduce some of the inherent drawbacks of democratic decision-making by making a better tool for and so this diagram shows basically what I'm trying to make. I found this diagram on Wikipedia. And so basically, what this shows is you've got your group of voters at the bottom. They elect representatives who each have different responsibilities. And the voters, together with the representatives, participate in this continuous process of decision-making. So this will probably be a multi-stage process. So here they've labeled the stages as suggestion, evaluation, decision and implementation, and review. But the point is, it's this continuous process that lets the people together make collective decisions. So at this point, let me clarify what this project is not. This is not just a polling website, although you will have the ability to have polls. This is not another one of those social media websites where you can upvote or downvote posts on the discussion board, although I do want to have that functionality included in it. And this is also, I don't expect this to be used for government elections, although it could be used for that hypothetically. So what is this project? So, like I said, this is a tool for making continuous group decisions. So I'm going to implement enough core functionality so that the site itself will be useful for groups to use to have their own votes in elections and make decisions. But I'm also trying to make it extensible enough that it'll also be a framework for people designing their own voting mechanisms. And when I say voting mechanism, I mean any sort of system where you have users giving input, which will result in a decision for the group. And ultimately, I want this to become sort of a platform for democratic web development. I'll get more into that later. So at the core of the system will be the voting mechanism. And there's nothing new about voting online. I'm sure you've all voted on some sort of poll or something. But I want this system to be flexible enough so the result of one vote can be another vote. So you can have this multi-stage process of voting. So like, for example, if you're having an election, the first stage would be nominating candidates. And then after that, you can vote among the candidates. And then maybe after that, have a runoff between the top up to. So this lets you have a more flexible system of voting. So in addition to having a flexible system for the voting mechanisms, what the site also gives you is some persistent group data, which will be hosted on my site and can be modified through voting. So that means when you have a vote, instead of just telling you the result of the vote, what it's going to do is it's actually going to execute some Java code which will make changes to your persistent group data on my server. So this data could include titles, which are attached to certain users. It could be voting rules, such as what percentage you need for something to pass, or just arbitrary group content that would be uploaded. And so since the point of this site is to keep everything democratic, I want the site itself as a whole to also be democratically controlled by the users. So there's going to be a sort of government for the site, which consists of 3 special groups, which are the user congress, the group congress, and the contributor congress. So every user of the site will be a member of the user congress, and every group on the site will get to send a representative to the group congress. So this way, if there's one group that is trying to control the site because it has a lot of members, the group congress will be able to control that because their group will still only have one vote in the group congress. And on the other hand, if a group is like making more groups to like get extra votes in the group congress, the user congress can take care of that. And then finally, the contributor congress is sort of like the executive branch of this government. And so to be in that, you have to be a programmer, a tester, or a donor, or somebody who's somehow contributing to the site. And so the contributor congress will be responsible for making changes to the site, but they'll be limited by the other 2 congresses to make sure that the development of the site is in line with the interests of the people using the site. So I'm implementing this with Google Web Toolkit, which is a Java web development framework. And the reason for this is, first of all, because I personally have a lot of Java experience, but also because I think Java is the ideal language for making a very extensible and modular system. So naturally, I've got a big hierarchy of classes at the heart of this. And so like if you wanted to write a new voting mechanism, you just have to make a new subclass of the voter class. And so it's trying to make it as extensible as possible. And at this point, I'm going to do a quick demo. This is still a new project, so the site doesn't do that much yet, but this will just give you a general idea of what I'm talking about. So this is the home page. So you've got 3 main tabs. You've got a news ticker, which I have not implemented yet. You've got a list of all the groups on the site, and a list of all the users on the site. So I'm going to go ahead and register. And this brings me to my user page for the user I just created. So what this shows right now, it's nothing fancy as you can see, but it's just a list. It's a list of all the titles that you currently have. So like I said, every user of the site is a member of the user congress. So right now, with this new account, the only title he has is member of the user congress. So I'm going to click on that title, and that'll bring me to a new screen for that title. And this shows me what I can do as a holder of that title. So right now I have it set so I can create a group or I can create a title within the user congress. So I'm going to make a new group. So now, if I go to the group list, I see the group I just made. If I click on that, it brings me to a page for the group. And so this has a list of all the members of the group, all the titles for the group, which are by default member, which is just being a member of the group. And then representative is the person you're sending to the group congress. then if there are any open proposals or votes, those would be listed there. So now, if I go back to my user page, I can see I'm now a member of ASISNT. So I'm going to go to that, and now I'm going to make a new title within this group. So now if I go to the group page again, you can see there's a new title called Supreme Leader, and there's a proposal for an election for that title. And so I haven't implemented the voting part yet, but if I had, it would be, I would click on here and I'd be able to like nominate candidates for this title. So yeah, that's basically all I've got right now for the demo. All right, so I have a lot of ideas for where this project could go in the future. One thing I want to have is a system of discussion with feedback. So, like if you've seen the presidential debates, they've got this nice little line graph at the bottom, which shows like the average of a bunch of people indicating how much they approve or disapprove of what's being said. So I want to have sort of the same thing, except with like an online chat room. So you can, before you have votes, you can have useful discussions to figure out what needs to be voted on. I think another cool feature would be giving groups the ability to make their own currencies. So, like if your group wants to incentivize its members to do certain things that help the group, you can set up a currency and like basically like a reward system, so that people will get your currency and then they can spend their currency on whatever, however you set it up. And then, so you could also have contracts between users, which would be like agreements to exchange currency for labor or ideas or information or whatever. And you could also have contracts between groups. So like if two groups vote to accept a certain contract, then you can have cooperation between these groups in a way that wouldn't otherwise be possible. Another thing I want to have is embeddable elements. So like if your group already has its own website, but you want to use some of the voting functionality on my site, you can embed little HTML elements from content hosted on my server in your site. So like, let's say you have a title that you want to have an election for using my site. You can have that displayed on your site by embedding a little box, which would automatically get updated with the results of the elections which happen on my site.